Hello and welcome to the show. We have here quite possibly the coolest looking vehicle in the world. Maybe not the best looking car. I think it would struggle against the likes of a Jaguar E-Type and so on. But this has got to be the coolest looking car I have ever seen. It is the Lamborghini Veneno. I think that's how it's pronounced. I might be wrong. If I am, my bad. But that's what I'm going to call it from now on. Okay, it's as good as my pronunciation can get. And this just looks fantastic. From whatever angle you look at it, it is absolutely crazy. And that's why we love it. That's why we love Lamborghini, because they come up with crazy, crazy cars, or at least they used to. And yeah, this thing absolutely fits the bill. This is what I want all Lamborghinis to look like in the future, with this sort of level of lunacy. You would not at all be surprised if there were hidden missile launchers and laser guns in this car. But that's the point. That's why we like these kind of cars, why we like the Lamborghinis. And this really is absolutely perfect. Almost on the crazy front. I like my cars to be a little bit different, to be a little bit stupid, to kind of stand out, and this would stand out amongst anything, pretty much. Inside, I like the interior on this one. It's got all sorts of various buttons and switches. I have no clue what they do, but I do quite like it. Again, the crazy carries on in the interior. Unfortunately, the sort of display is not quite as cool as you get with the Reventon. The Reventon still has by far the best kind of dashboard thing. This one it's okay. It's not terrible, but it doesn't quite beat the Reventon when it comes to a cool dashboard. But still, visual-wise, this car is, in my opinion, almost perfect from the lunacy front, at least. When it comes to the driving front, the lunacy doesn't quite continue. This is, like all modern Lamborghinis, sadly four-wheel drive, and at this point you are expecting me to say that I don't really like it because it is a little bit safe and not really silly enough. And there certainly is an element of that to this car, but I do quite like it. I really, really quite like driving this car, because it is almost perfect for my driving style. In case you haven't watched our videos before, I like my cars to be planted. I want the back end of whatever car I'm driving, I want the back end of it to stay on the road no matter what I do with it. I don't want it sliding around. If I'm sliding around, then I'm losing time. And if the trade-off for that is a little bit of understeer, then fine, I'll take that, as long as the back of the car is planted on the road. That is how this car drives. It is nigh on impossible unless you are completely trying. Unless you are using a handbrake or going on the grass, it is almost impossible to get the back of this car sliding. It just doesn't do it. You've been coming out of some of the slower speed corners here, in second gear perhaps, and you floor it, and the car just grips the road. It is ridiculously good handling. And this is a car that has 740 horsepower, 500 torques, 0 to 60 time of 2.7 seconds. That's silly speed. That is really very, very fast. It's doing 100 miles an hour in under 6 seconds. It'll top out at 207 miles an hour. And this car is practically easy to drive. I can't believe I'm going to say that. When you look at this car, when you hear the sound of this Lamborghini, this is easy to drive. This is really very, very easy to drive on the most part. And that's genuinely incredible. Yes, there is a fair bit of understeer in this car. It is a very, very powerful four-wheel drive vehicle. And if you aren't used to it, it probably will catch you out from time to time. I love the way this car drives. It is almost perfect for the way I drive a vehicle. It will take a bit of getting used to if you are used to kind of more slidey vehicles, because yeah, at some of the higher speed corners you may struggle a little bit if you're not expecting it. But you can put down 700 horsepower out of any of the slow speed corners here with almost complete confidence that this vehicle will grip the road. And that is not quite what I was expecting. Even cars such as Audi R8, Nissan GTR, they slide around more than this thing does. It's absolutely ridiculous, this car. And I really do quite like driving it. As much as I like scary, silly, exciting cars, this one is just so perfect to drive that I will forgive it the fact that it doesn't drive at all how it looks. When looking at this car, you expect it to be constantly trying to kill you, but it really isn't. It is a lovely, lovely vehicle to drive. I I think the easiest way, though, to explain this car is because it is still a hypercar, and while the four-wheel drive is all mostly safe, things can sometimes go a slight bit wrong. The easiest way of sort of comparing this to is if you imagine a lion or a tiger, something that has been brought up in captivity, sort of raised by humans. It is all very friendly. However, it is still a wild animal, and you are never 100% sure of quite what it is going to do, and the same goes for the Veneno. As amazing as this car is to drive, you can still get it wrong. It is not completely idiot-proof. I put a wheel on the grass at about 180, 190 miles an hour. Yeah, it didn't like that. It really didn't like that. I tried my best to save it, but had a humongous spin. Yeah, it is possible to crash this car. It is possible to crash everything, but this is probably the easiest to drive hypercar I have ever seen. It's ridiculously good. Very, very nice vehicle to drive, this one. You will have to be careful from time to time with the understeer, and like with all vehicles on Forza 5, curbs and grass can throw it around. So yeah, you still got to be occasionally wary of it, but yeah, it really is a phenomenal vehicle. Now you may be thinking that there is very little really to rival this in the sort of absolutely crazy front. Certainly visual-wise, I don't think there is anything in the world that even gets near it. Certainly not outside of Lamborghini, but this is the best that I could come up with. It is the Pagani Zonda Cinque Roadster. I quite like the Zonda. It's not as cool looking as the Lamborghini, and I don't think anything ever will be, but it's still a pretty damn good looking car. It's another very good sounding vehicle, and another absurdly fast car. 0 to 60 takes 3.2 seconds. 0 to 100, 6.5. Not quite as fast, but remember this is rear wheel drive, and it'll top out at 206. So fairly similar on the performance front. Those acceleration times are slightly down just because it doesn't have the grip off the line that a four-wheel drive car does. Power-wise, it's a little less powerful with 678 horsepower, but it does weigh a bit less. It weighs about 400 pounds less. So overall power-to-weight ratio I think might actually be slightly better on the Zonda. And I do think when it comes to the acceleration front, sort of the 100 to 200 mile an hour is quicker in the Zonda than it is in the Lamborghini, and I believe that is because the Zonda has better gear ratios. The Lamborghini kind of runs out a bit of steam once you get it into 6th. I think it has a 7th gear as well, whereas the Zonda is much better on the gear ratios. On the handling front, the Zonda actually surprised me. I was expecting this to be a bit leery, quite slidey. We're talking about Forza 5 here, where the cars generally have less grip, and I was expecting the Zonda to be a bit of a pain, a bit of a fight through some of the corners. And it wasn't. It was actually a really very, very good car. Again, this one here was, yeah, much better to drive than I expected it to be. Of course, it is a very powerful rear-wheel drive vehicle, and out of some of the slower corners around here, didn't take very much to get the vehicle sliding, and you will get yourself into a lot more trouble with this than you would with the Lamborghini. The thing that impressed me about this car, though, is through some of the very high-speed corners, the back end was very, very planted. Sometimes with these sort of scary supercars, you'll be going through very fast corners and the back end's wanting to step out, but this doesn't. This really does stick to the road. The only time you find the car sliding around is when you're trying to put the power down, and that's just you being cautious on the throttle. That you can deal. I can deal with that if I just need to be a little bit more cautious with the accelerator pedal. That's fine, provided the car sticks to the road through the high-speed corners. Then that's pretty much what I want from a hypercar. This is very, very good car. It really is. I think it was slightly quicker as well as I was driving it around Bathurst. Slightly quicker over the course of the lap because this gets to its top speed faster than the Lamborghini. Down a couple of these long straights, it tops out quicker than the Lambo, which it surprised me a little bit. I think the gears could do with slight tweaking when it comes to the Veneno. But no, the Zonda is, again, it's a much better car to drive than I ever expected. You do have to have an element of caution with this one, though. This is certainly not as easy to drive as the Lambo. You will have to be careful on the throttle if you turn all the assists off with this car, because, yeah, you're talking, what is it, nearly 700 horsepower through the rear wheels. You put the power down a bit too soon and you can have problems. But yeah, remarkable, easier to drive than I was expecting it. Yeah, and a really very nice car this. However, it is time to hand both of them over to our tame racing driver to see how quickly he can drive them around the Top Gear test track. Off the line, we know the Lamborghini is going to be faster. There's not going to be very much that is quicker than the Veneno. Because of that four-wheel drive system and an awful lot of power, it launches like mad, and as we see coming into the first corner, the Lamborghini has already got a fairly sizable lead. And through a few of the slow corners here, the Lamborghini is going to have a little bit of an advantage. You can put the power down much sooner. You can have it in second gear and booted out of these corners with absolutely no problems. You just can't do that in a Zonda. As we come up towards the hammerhead, the Lamborghini is starting to pull out a fairly sizable gap. But this is where the Zonda starts closing back in again. The Lamborghini suffers with some understeer through some of the higher speed corners that you don't get in the Zonda, and the Zonda has enough grip to be able to carry good speed through the follow-through, so it starts reeling the Lamborghini in. Past the tyre bundle, both cars are very fast through there, completely flat out as we come up towards the second to last corner. Again, this is where the Zonda is closing in. You can see that gap has shrunk to almost nothing as they head up towards the final corner. As they do a race to the line, the Lamborghini gets some airtime, and it is very close between the pair of them. Our driver then proceeded to enjoy his final lap with the Lamborghini by flinging it into pretty much every corner. This is a 1.2 million credit Lamborghini. There are 4 of them in the world, I think. This is a 740 horsepower hypercar, and you can throw it around like a toy. That is how much grip the four-wheel drive system in this car delivers. It's ridiculous. It really is. Look at that. There is so much grip in this car. It's really, yeah. I was astounded just how good this car is to drive. This was the first, I think it was the first lap our driver was doing sliding it around as well. The first one I saw on the replay he sent anyway. Yeah, that is the grip you get from a four-wheel drive system. That is the ease, almost the ease of driving this car. It's an incredible vehicle for Veneno. I really do quite like it. It is perhaps taking over my top spot on the hypercar list ahead of the TVR Speed 12, although that would be a very tough decision. It's just a crazy vehicle that is not at all crazy to drive. Anyway, on to the lap times, and it is the Lamborghini that tops our timesheet, just beating the Zonda. The Zonda closed the gap massively on the final half of that lap because of the slight understeer you get in the Lamborghini. The pair of them are almost 2 seconds quicker than an Enzo, 3 seconds quicker than an Aventador. Yeah, both of them are mighty fast. Both of them are very good cars for perhaps slightly different reasons on the handling front. But yeah, I'm surprised how well the Zonda deals with all of its power. I was expecting the Zonda to be a lot scarier than it actually was, and the Lamborghini is just a phenomenally good vehicle to drive. So there we go, the Lamborghini is fractionally faster around a track, and out of the two it would be the Lamborghini that I would have, and out of almost any car in the world I think I would struggle to find many that I would want before this Lamborghini, because it's just look at it, it is absolutely crazy, yet it is almost safe to drive. It's incredibly good car to drive, this. Really absolutely worth worth the money. Definitely worth buying the DLC for Forza 5 for this vehicle. It is a phenomenal car. Yeah, it would be a very tough choice between this and a TVR Speed 12 at the top of my sort of most exciting hypercars. I can't think of anything else. I think I would still have a Daytona ahead of one of these, but yeah, this is still a phenomenal vehicle. I really do quite like this one. But don't get me wrong, the Zonda is also very good. The Zonda handles blooming well, considering that's a lot of power going to the rear wheels in what is, again, another fairly silly vehicle. So let me know in the comments section, what would you have? Would you have the Lamborghini, or would you have the Zonda? Considering around the course of a lap, they are both pretty similar on speed. It will probably depend on the layout of the track as to which car it suits more. However, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.